So we just got done finishing Act 3 and the final boss of the pre-hard mode version of Path of Exile Early Access. I think the really great part about Path of Exile right now is that basically each act, and as you continue to level up, unlocks more and more power. And while it's not immediately obvious what kind of skills you're supposed to put together and your best ways of making it through that, your build is going to have to evolve as well. So while this is going to be my first ever Path of Exile video, I'm trying to approach this from my own novice experience, learning as I go, talking to some of the experts that I know, like my boy Gazzy, just picking the brains of Path of Exile experts while I basically tried to blind run myself through this. Now I can say what I have for you is a build guide for each one of the acts as your build is going to evolve and get stronger and stronger. I'm going to list out every single skill gem, every single passive skill gem, the spirit skill gems that you're going to want to use, and then give you a base idea of how I'm working through my passive skill tree. Because by the time I got to the end of Act 3 and beat the final boss completely solo, just kind of hard forcing my way through, learning as I went, I ended up being level 47. And yes, I did take the Infernalist Ascendancy. I'm going to have timestamps down to each act in each part of those acts. I'm going to show you not only gems that I use, but the skill rotation out in real combat so you can get a better idea of what it's supposed to be doing. And if you want to just skip ahead to those timestamps, they're down below. Go ahead and use them. You don't have to listen to me yet. But I realize you very well might not know who I am, so I just want to take a quick second to introduce myself because I am, for all intents and purposes, brand new to the Path of Exile community, but that does not mean that I'm any slouch in the ARPG genre, and I have quite a few credentials under my belt, just so that you know I'm not some random dude yapping on the internet as if my opinion should half matter. If you're brand new to the channel, first off, if you appreciate the video by the end, consider subscribing. You don't want to be missing out on any of my coverage in the ARPG scene, but most notably, Path of Exile, as all of us continue to sink our teeth into the early access. But my name's Macrobio Boy. If you've seen me anywhere, I was Diablo 2 speedrunner for a multitude of years. I have a bunch of world first and world records under my belt from that time. Most notably, I was featured in PC Gamer because I'm the first person to have ever beat the hell difficulty in a single speedrun as a pacifist sorceress. I'll go ahead and link to the video right there. It's probably one of my crowning achievements in video gaming to date. But after that, I got picked up by Maxroll. I was a content lead for Diablo 2 Resurrected, and then I moved on to the Diablo 4 team as well, where I'm the Necromancer class lead. I get to work with some amazing people like Lord Sour, Chronix in the past, as well as my boy Sirach, and we're basically just trying to pump out the best possible build guides for the Necromancer and D4 that you can possibly enjoy. And this is one of the reasons why I had to play the Witch, why I had to play Minions. Basically, my comment section has been inundated every single moment, any single video. If I had the audacity to be talking about anything other than Path of Exile 2, was the promise of how amazing Minions were going to be in this game. Let's go ahead and talk about your Act 1 configuration for your skills, your support gems, and what you should expect for them to do, and what the gameplay will look like. For every one of these progression steps, I'm only going to be using the skill gems that you would be able to get to up until that point, and I'm going to try to do them in order that you would be getting them. Similarly, I'm going to assume that, especially since you want to be playing a minion build, you're going to be using a scepter. So I went and found a scepter from each one of the acts to give you an idea of what kind of stats you might be looking for and which ones will really help you out the most. I'm going to explain these things in very simple detail just so you get an idea of what they're meant to do, but the long and short of it is, Contagion is going to put a debuff on a target that'll do damage. This will also carry any other debuffs that do chaos damage. When you inevitably get up to Essence Strain, which is level 3 gem, which will also drop in Act 1, this applies a huge amount of chaos damage over time. So Contagion will take this damage and your Essence Strain damage, put them together, slap them onto a target, but it doesn't stop there. Contagion will also spread to other targets, as well as stay on the corpses of enemies, even after they've died. Unearth says if you hit a corpse or kill a monster with this skill, that monster will be resurrected as a little bone construct. They have a short duration, they have very low health, but what it will do together is also carry the contagion on any monsters, which will also carry the essence strain that you've applied to any monsters, meaning that when your little unearthed skeleton robot goes running up to another target and hits them, it will spread the contagion further. Every time you spread the contagion, it does more damage. This is your bread and butter. This is how you're going to clear through everything. Now, the big benefit here is that Essence Drain is actually a fairly good single target damage skill, so you'll be able to use this on bosses as well to just spam it to add on even more damage. For Essence Drain, the two support gems I went for with this was Arcane Tempo. Arcane Tempo is just going to make you cast this faster, seems good, and then Minion Pact. The fun part about Minion Pact is even though our skeletons basically will do nothing for us, they're still there. And that means that you can still abuse the fact that you can train them of their maximum life to be able to empower your Essence Drain to do even more damage. This will mean that when it spreads on Contagion, it will do even further more damage. You notice I don't really have any support gems for Contagion. There are a couple different ones that you can go with. There's a duration bonus that you can grab here, but honestly, I didn't really feel like making Contagion do anything different was necessarily even worth my time worrying about. For Unearth, there is a very special support gem that we get to use here called Minion Instability. What this says is that if your minion were being reduced to low life, meaning 35% of their maximum life, they will explode, which will deal a percentage of their total maximum life as fire damage around them. What this basically means is that even if your unearthlings, after they're done spreading Contagion, aren't particularly useful or not doing a lot of damage, they just blow up, just doing extra free damage, and you can respawn these guys all the time. They can't just expire from their timer, they have to take damage, but luckily these guys do get hit quite often, and they have fairly low maximum life to start. We're going to walk out into the Fraythorn because this is an incredibly important part for the next steps of our character's progression. This is where you're going to get a Spirit skill gem, which is what you actually need to unlock Raging Spirits. Let's go ahead and look at this 3-skill combo to get a better idea of what it's meant to do. But walking around in some monsters here, I'm going to hit them with Contagion, going to hit them with my Essence Drain, and then I'm going to Unearth. All of a sudden, my little spider dudes are running around, and now they have the Contagion on them, and they're spreading it off to other characters. So as we continue to kill here, I summon another corpse. This guy will walk up and now spread the Contagion. You see I have this little glow on them. There they go. They're spreading Contagion. They're actually doing fairly decent damage. And again, this is basically what the entirety of your gameplay is going to look like at first. Whenever there's a particularly tanky monster, or you're going to have a boss near you somewhere, you're going to be spamming your Essence Drain into them. Now, the cool part about Essence Drain just a little bit further is that it's a projectile, and projectile is going to get very important very soon. Because you see, we're here in Fraythorn. In Fraythorn, you're going to complete 3 rituals, and you're going to fight the King in the Mist. The reason why King in the Mist in Act 1 is so important is because this is where you're going to drop a Spirit skill gem. The Spirit skill gem is what you need to be able to spawn the Raging Spirits, basically the thing that's going to carry you through the rest of the game, probably all the way into the end game, post hard mode, Act 1, 2, and 3, and even into mapping, etc. Now you may be asking, Mac, why are you recommending a skill gem that is clearly not available to me? These are the witch skill gems. Like, what are you talking about? The really important thing to understand about Path of Exile is that your class doesn't determine what skills you can use. You can use whatever skills that you meet the requirements for. And at a level 5 skill gem, which you'll get from the Fraythorn quest, you can unlock Raging Spirits. It's here onto Sorceress. But Raging Spirits cannot be overstated just how insanely powerful this skill is, because what it gives you is minions on demand. Now, while your skeleton warriors will continue to respawn after all of them are done dying, you're going to have plenty of periods where you're waiting for 6, 7, even 8 seconds before they fully respawn. And then when they just get wiped out immediately by AoE, you will have to wait again. Similarly, even though this combination with Unearth, Essence Drain, and Contagion is insanely powerful, the moment that you run out of corpses, again like a boss, or in an arena with an elite monster that doesn't summon adds, you just can't use this combo. You'll rely on Essence Drain and Contagion to continue to do damage, but you won't really have minions anymore. But again, that's why we're using Raging Spirits. Raging Spirit will require you to either cast a fire spell that has a radius, or cast a fire spell that can hit targets, most notably a projectile. And there is an incredibly easy to use and low level spell that basically does both of these things for us. Flame Wall is a fire spell that has a radius, so just by casting this one time, you'll already spawn at base level, 5 Raging Spirits. So you can have a total of 10 of these little guys going. They don't really get aggro, they can all collapse onto one monster, they're super fast, and they have a duration. So what this basically means is that they are minions that are just strictly better because you can respawn them whenever you want. They zerg down the boss, and then they die off. They don't really get confused. They don't go running around doing other stuff. You don't really have to direct them. You just drop a firewall on your target, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good. So just to start off, you're going to be using Fire Infusion with them. It just means that they do more fire damage, and they do less of damage types that they don't do. For Flame Wall, I ended up using Fortress. Fortress is a really interesting addition here, and I'll show you why we use it. It's basically for ease of gameplay, as well as just making the rest of your minions less dumb than they could be. And to be able to benefit even further from this Flame Wall Raging Spirits combo, you can start slotting in your Skeleton Arsonists. Your Arsonists are going to throw projectiles, which when they pass through Flame Wall will actually gain additional damage on them because any projectile that passes through them does bonus fire damage. And then the projectiles that they actually throw do fire damage in the first place. On top of that, you can add on Scatter Shot, which means they'll throw 2 more projectiles. And while they will do less damage, each one of those projectiles will gain the damage from Flame Wall. Then you can use Magnified Effect. This means that the explosions that they toss out attack in a larger area, making it easier for them to put on their damage. Now, the way that your gameplay is going to evolve here is basically you could keep doing everything else you're already doing. Essence Drain is a really good single target projectile, as well as going through your firewall. It'll actually gain that fire damage on it as well. You can see the particle effect here. And you can keep using Unearth just to be able to pick up more monsters as you go, just to have some meat shields on you. But I basically stopped casting Contagion at this point because I just want to spam Flame Wall. The moment that you cast Flame Wall, it's going to make a wall of flame around your target, but you'll notice that it immediately spawns half of the total number of infernal raging spirits that you can have. Casting 2 of them will bring up all 10 of them to go attack monsters for you. You can see how efficient they are. Now, again, the really important thing to note is that your Arsonists, when they cast through this flame wall, will also gain that fire damage. And this is why I think that the support gem Fortress is so good. The fact that you quite literally ring the monster in fire basically means that the Arsonists can't miss the flame wall. This allows you to basically spam it wherever you would, and your Arsonists will always be able to shoot through it. Similarly, you will as well whenever you're moving around the combat scenario that you're in, dodging boss attacks, etc. One last thing to know here, just as something that you can do if you really want to, your Arsonists also have an explosion effect. This has to target a monster with a specific amount of life, not low life. It is an integer value that is described in the Skeleton Arsonist skill. But the cool part about this is, especially at low level, your Raging Spirits have such low life that you can always target one for an explosion. So right before they expire, you can use all of your Arsonist explosions to get a little bit more damage out of them, as opposed to using it on your Skeleton Warriors, who might be better served as tanks. But this combination here of maybe one Arsonist, maybe not even using one yet, but Flame Wall with your Raging Spirits is going to hard carry. I can't stress enough just how strong these guys are. It's absolutely insane, and they're only going to get stronger. Now, walking into Act 2 is when I realized that that combination of Unearth, Contagion, and Essence Drain just wasn't going to cut it. And I had to really dip back into the strength of that Flame Wall, the Raging Fire Spirits, my Arsonists, as well as finding a more proactive projectile spell that would benefit from all of these same things. We're going to continue to support the Skeleton Warriors that are coming from your Scepter, still using the combo of Last Gasp as well as Minion Instability, still using Flame Wall with the Fortress. On Raging Spirits, we're going to still use Fire Infusion, but we're also going to add on Ignition. Ignition is going to drastically increase the chance of igniting. The direct damage spell that we're going to pick up is actually Ember Fusillade. Fusillade could have been picked up in Act 1, like I said, but you really didn't need it. It's a projectile and has a really interesting interaction where you could basically cast it in a couple times in a row, be able to store up 7 of them, and then they'll all fire off at a target. And each one will do more damage based off of how many embers had already hit that target in the past. You can get up to 7 of these bad boys on you. And what you can basically do is charge them up as you're approaching a boss or walking into a fight. And if you don't want to let them go just yet, cast it again and it will reset the timer before they all fire off. We're going to add on Arcane Tempo here because basically we need to be able to cast this in between our flame walls. I like to drop down 2 flame walls, then cast this through it. And what it basically gives you a really good tempo of is resetting flame wall, resetting Fusillade, resetting Flame Wall, resetting Fusillade. The Fusillade projectiles will also respawn your Raging Spirits whenever they hit a target, so it also just makes sure that you basically have 100% uptime on the spirits, even if you haven't cast Flame Wall in a couple seconds. The second thing that we're going to use to make this even better is actually Unleash. And Unleash says a lot of stuff, but what it basically says is that every once in a while, you'll cast Fusillade twice for the price of once. Your Arsonists are going to get stronger at this point because you're going to have skill points that you're using in your passive tree, but there will come a time where they could actually survive enough to make their damage well worth it. Also at this point in Act 1, you would have done a quest where you have gained 30 permanent spirit, so you could probably summon maybe like 2 or 3 of these bad boys until we go do our Ascendancy. There is a different combo that I was personally using in Act 2, which is actually the Frost Mages along with Deep Freeze. And what this basically meant was that your Frost Mage, which you could proactively use to be able to cast an Ice Bomb, the Ice Bomb applies a huge amount of cold damage and also has a huge amount of chill. Chill will basically stagger a boss or freeze enemies. So combat continues to be fairly simple. We want to make sure that we have our Firestorm up, and then again, you quick spawn your Fusillade, and then as you're resetting up your next ones, the Fusillade will fire out in the direction that you cast. So all of a sudden, your Arsonists are doing really good damage. You're able to spam cast, charge up your Fusillade, move around, direct it at some targets, and it'll help to mow down monsters. The really important part is that it does very, very good single target damage, because again, the more times that the Fusillade hits a single target, the more damage that it will do to them. So it's able to clear out stuff very quickly, especially against a boss here. I had a lot of people basically asking me, how do I manage my single target damage? And how do I make it so that this will clear out things very quickly? And I just felt like Fusillade was the best answer to these people's questions. Being able to clear through individual monsters, continuing up with a really, really good amount of AoE damage. And then again, when anything else fails, just exploding one of your Raging Spirits with the Arsonists that you have. Now, the really important thing about what happens in Act 2 is that you actually unlock your Ascendancy. And the Ascendancy is going to add on arguably the best minion that you're going to have for a while, because it's actually able to tank. It does a huge amount of damage. It's a doggo, so that's already phenomenal. And basically, it is what really brought me like this excited into the Minion playstyle, you know, ignoring the fact that I was supposed to be able to be a Pokemon catcher, but sadly they had to actually deactivate the Essence Storing Gem. Hopefully that gets added back in soon, but let's not get sad. Let's talk about your Hellhound. In Act 2, you're going to be able to perform your first Ascendancy. On my build, the one that I was just showing you, I was able to clear this out at level 22. I wouldn't say that my gear was good. I didn't spend a lot of time farming anywhere to get gear. I basically just slapped on whatever I got, popped them up into magic pieces of gear, added on another affix with the other orb, used that on my flasks as well, even on my charm. And that gave me more than enough survivability and more than enough damage to be able to do the trial. And when you do your Ascendancy, you have to pick one or the other. I would highly recommend the Infernalist, especially if you want to be a Minion Witch. And the reason is because 2 points in, you get 2 points whenever you do the trial. You get your Hellhound. Your Hellhound is going to add survivability, not only just from being a fairly good frontline tank, but quite literally absorbing damage that you would take. And on top of that, this dude just spreads Ignite in an area around them naturally, meaning that they super well synergize with the Ignite that we're spreading from our Raging Spirits, from our Flame Wall, from our Fusillade, as well as from our Arsonists, and then later on from Fireball. So let's talk about the Hellhound and how you should skill this. Your Hellhound, you just go ahead and toss it on, you turn him on, bada bing, bada boom, you have a Hellhound. So now all of a sudden, you got your good little doggo here. Gosh dang it, is he cute. I love him so much. He's going to automatically revive whenever all of them are done dying. You could put on the same things that you're using for like Skeleton Warrior. So instead of him dying super quickly, maybe he sticks around for another 4 seconds. Maybe the moment that he would die, he could explode as well. I don't find these to be the best uses for him. Instead, I wanted to use him as a tank, as well as an opportunity to be able to further spread our damage output. Now, the recommended gems for your Hellhound are actually fairly good. Meat Shield is basically going to give him a ton of additional maximum life, so he's able to tank for you longer. And Elemental Army is going to grant you a ton of additional elemental resistances. So again, he'll just be able to survive damage that much easier. And those two are the ones that I ultimately ended up going with. Now, later on, you'll be able to make them do even more damage, but just being able to tank more, just being able to survive more hits, that just seems like a really good use case for him. And since your Hellhound is completely set and forget, you basically don't have to do anything else. It doesn't change up your gameplay. He's just out there also helping to spread damage. And again, this combination will easily carry you throughout Act 2. If you feel like you're dying too much or you don't have enough CC, consider using your Frost Skelly Mages instead of your Arsonists. But I've found a lot of the times in this game, other than one example in Act 3, basically just killing monsters faster was one of the best ways that I could manage to survive scenarios you otherwise would die if you're constantly playing on the back foot or trying to like hard CC the areas around you. These monsters just don't care. They all jump on you from a million feet away, especially in Act 2. They're all 1,000 times faster than you. You have no mobility. You just gotta get them down before they get you. Now, Act 3 is where the final version of this early game Infernalist Fiery Minion build is really going to start to shine. because you get the next level of spirit gems, which means we're going to be able to pick up something called Ignite on Cast, and I'll very quickly touch on that. But you're also able to get support gems level 2. Rather than show you all of that in the town, I'm just going to show you right here in the character screen, because I think you have a good idea of the majority of this stuff, and I just want to touch on what's different. Now, at this point, I no longer had skeleton warriors. I was actually using a completely different scepter, but if you still have skeleton warriors on your scepter, there's not a problem there. Continue to use them with the 2 support gems of Last Gasp and Minion Instability, just so you can get a little bit more utility out of them, as well as being able to target them most notably with Pain Offering, because you don't really want to be hitting your arsonists here, but being able, well, I just hit them anyways, but being able to hit your other minions with this bonus is a huge buff. Your Hellhound is going to be swapped over to be able to do a bit more damage here, and as you naturally level up, it will actually gain additional support gem slots. So I'm still using Elemental Army so he can survive big hits, but I'm also swapping Fire Infusion over to him, just so that, because he only does fire damage, I want him to be doing more fire damage. And I actually added on Wildfire as well. What this means is that his natural ability to ignite in an area will be even further amplified, spreading it further. Continuing to use Flame Wall with Fortress so that all of our great arsonists here just have an easier time to hit things through a firewall. And then the first gem that I actually empowered to be able to have more support gems on it was my Raging Spirits. I'm not going to lie to you, these guys are carrying the vast majority of your damage until you get into the cruel versions of Act 1, 2, and 3, where I think the arsonists are going to start playing a larger role, but we're going to try to super buff their damage. First, we're going to use Infernal Legion. In addition to Infernal Legion, we're going to add on Feeding Frenzy. They take more damage, but they don't really take damage because monsters don't really hit them, and they do 30% bonus damage, and then, like I already alluded to, Fire Penetration to be able to push this even further. We also pick up our first ability to be able to apply a curse. Now, the curse is a little bit finicky, and I'll just go ahead and highlight there. I'm going to cast the curse, and then there it goes, it applied. I found that applying the curse just wasn't worth doing unless I was fighting a really strong elite monster with multiple affixes or a boss, because everything else just moves so fast that they quite literally run out of the total radius of the curse itself. But the benefit of the curse is that it just straight up reduces monsters' fire resistance. And the cool part here is that not only will that increase our minions' damage output, because the minion will see the target's fire res, it will also increase our fire damage against them as well. So this ability to be able to synergize between our minions and our damage means that neither one of us are really slacking. We're both contributing to our total damage output. I put on Persistence here so that the curse will last for longer, because if it's so hard to actually hit a target with the curse, I want to get a large bang for my buck here. And we're going to swap out Ember Fusillade with a significantly stronger spell in the form of Fireball. For Fireball, we're basically going to use the same combo here. We're going to use Arcane Tempo to cast it faster and Unleash to cast it double. And Fireball is just absolutely insane. This skill is bananas wild. It's going to fire out multiple projectiles that when they hit something will then all explode into multiple projectiles. Casting it through a firewall makes it so that it will gain additional fire damage each time that it travels through the firewall. So the initial missile and then the explosions. And then on top of that, it helps to spawn a ton of our Raging Spirits all the time. So even just dropping like a single firewall so that your arsonists as well as your fireball itself will get through, you'll have permanent uptime on all your Raging Spirits, and the damage output on this thing is absolutely nutty. Hopefully you've picked up some additional spirit. In Act 3, there's another quest to be able to get additional 30 spirit. So even if you just have a base scepter, you should have 160, meaning that you should have a pretty decent amount of arsonists at your control here. Again, the great part of arsonists, they will fire through the firewall, get additional damage. And if you're running out of mana, you can always just use the tried and true, explode some of your little fiery minions before they expire for even more damage output. Now, like I alluded to, we're going to be swapping over to use Pain Offering. This is a massive buff since this works for all of our Raging Spirits as well. They just do insano damage when you have this up. You're really going to notice the output difference. Also, we're all going to pretend like I didn't forget to turn on my third light, and all of a sudden I'm not like hilariously lighter skin tone all of a sudden. But the other skill that you're going to be using is Cast on Ignite. This is going to require a higher level spirit skill gem. And the cool part about this is that you're going to put other skills into it. And then when it happens, you'll use it. And I just want to highlight that very quickly. I have it currently casted and I just have to go ignite a target. So I'm running around. I'm going to go find me a little monster, and you're going to look immediately around me when I actually manage to ignite something. So here are some guys. I'm going to ignite them. And all of a sudden you're going to notice a little spiky wall is spawning around me because I have Cast on Ignite casting the Bone Prison. You can see the very small bone wall last for a couple seconds around us as we're in combat here. And there you go. This little bone wall is spitting up around me. The reason why that's happening is basically, and this is a little bit hard to understand, but just like stick with me here. When you meet the criteria of the cast on effect, it will save up an amount of energy. Energy is a completely separate stat. It's not your mana, it's not your spirit. It is the energy of the cast on effect. And when you reach maximum energy, it will trigger the skill. What this does is automates the skill that you would cast in here. Now, I played around with a lot of different things, like, oh, cast on Ignite with my curse. That's amazing. My curse costs 100 plus mana. So every single time I ignite, and I'm going to ignite everything in a radius around me with Flame Wall just by itself, all of a sudden, I'm casting Curse on every single target. That's amazing, except it only casts one time, and then all my mana is gone. And then I can't do anything else, because this thing is permanently casting this skill. But the cool part about Bone Cage, not Bone Wall, is that basically it gives you some control and survivability. Since you're sitting in the back lines, you're igniting in front of you, you drop the Bone Cage around you. The monsters then dive into you because they're lunatics and just ignore your minions. And the Bone Cage will impede them. If they get hit by enough of the Bone Cage parts that they actually walk through, they basically get stuck in that area, impaled by the bones. And this gives you the ability to basically get defense while getting offense. And then when you put a support gem into your cast on effect gem, this will modify either the skill that it would cast or that effect. So just by having Ignite on cast here and active, I would gain Clarity. Clarity would increase my mana regeneration rate. So it would basically offset the mana cost of the Bone Cage in the first place, basically making this free. Now, turning on cast on Ignite does require you to reserve more spirit, which means you're going to have less arsonists. And what I found is that against a boss, I don't really care about a Bone Cage, so I would personally turn this off and then get more arsonists while walking into a combat scenario with a boss or something that I didn't really care about trying to CC. What this meant was that I had a cool kit to be able to use against clearing out density and maps, and then a stronger kit to be able to bring into bosses. Now, I've largely stopped using Cast on Ignite in my own personal playthrough, and I'm just waiting until I can actually support this auto-casting my curse for me, and then I'm just going to put that away. But for right now, I think that this is a really good option for anybody looking for it. So let's go ahead and look at gameplay with all of this together, just again, to get a better idea of what you're supposed to be looking at. So basically, combat's going to look fairly similar to what we've seen before, but let's add in those new tools. We're casting our Flame Wall like we normally would to get our Raging Spirits out. As we walk up to other packs of monsters, we can even initiate, like here's a great boss here. Since it's a boss, I'm going to curse it, because we actually like having our curse up on a boss. And then I'm going to, once I have a Flame Wall up and I have my curse down and all these monsters leave me alone for a hot second, we are going to dump in with Flame Wall and then Fireball. Fireballing on the target a lot. Now, as I'm running around and getting my mana back, I'm going to take one of my minions, Pain Offering that bad boy up. The boss is going to immediately use an AoE attack on it, of course. I'm just going to pick one of my other skeletons. And then as long as I can keep up all my Raging Spirits, you see a huge amount of additional damage output once we have our curse on the target, Pain Offering up, our firewalls for our projectile damage, and then dumping it with Fireball. With this setup, I think I was able to clear out the Ascendancy in Act 3 somewhere around like level 33-ish, I think I was, around that time, maybe level 35. And then in addition to that, actually breaking into the boss, the final boss of Act 3. Loved the fight, only took me 2 attempts. Was a really, really easy time with that. Basically, you just gotta be really willing to set up your stuff, stand completely still, and dump in with Fireball while all your minions are just trashing them through a Flame Wall, and just ignore or dodge the most impactful attacks. And using that tactic alone, I was able to clear out all the bosses leading up to that. And again, 2 tries on the final boss. So now that we've gone through all the skill gems and how I think that you should change them, going through the acts and how your gameplay and your strategy needs to change to be able to accommodate them as well, let's go ahead and talk about this skill tree. Now, there are amazing, incredibly smart people in this space who are already covered this, or might have been able to give you better advice on this. This is just the personal track that I took, so that if you're attempting to replicate this yourself, you know what power you should be able to have at any given moment and what you should be able to expect. But again, I was trying to hard commit to only using minions, and making sure that everything that I invested was into my minions' damage, and then anything else that I did was just to further support them and make sure I just wasn't a wet noodle. For your Ascendancy, again, building down to Loyal Hellhound, then building down to Altered Flesh. Would obviously be building down to Bedat's Will. Bedat's Will is going to make it so that I reserve some of my maximum life, meaning that that maximum life just basically isn't available to me. And I'm going to gain maximum spirit for every 25 max life. That means I'm going to want to build into max life first and foremost, and it's going to allow me to summon a significantly larger amount of minions than I would previously. Then the rest of what I wanted to do with my skill tree was just further increase my minions' damage, further increase their survivability, and then give them opportunities to be able to gain damage that I otherwise couldn't grant to them. So picking all of the minion damage and the spell damage going up through here, picking up raw destruction, building up through the middle here for Power of the Dead for more damage and more attack speed. Building up into the crossroads, I build down to Living Death. Living Death will make it so that your minions revive faster. And then we're basically just going to take some highway points here up until this big node. So just a ton of survivability and damage for your minions, more resistances, more max res, more attack speed, they revive faster, more damage, and then they have increased area of effect and increased cooldown recovery rate. So you're able to spam your Arsonist more often, their AoE damage will hit more often, your Ignite from your Hellhound, the AoE damage that your Ignite is going to apply from your Raging Spirits, etc. There were a few more maximum life nodes here, and I think I'll ultimately pick them up, but it wasn't a high priority for me. Because we have to build out to two very important nodes. First, building up to highway here, this is where you're actually going to pick up Lord of Horrors. Lord of Horrors is going to reduce the cost of reserving spirit. The less they cost, the more that you can have. Then you're going to want to build down into Right Hand of Darkness so that they all have more area of effect. You'll notice I'm not really worrying about getting the more maximum life or more damage reduction at this current rate where I'm currently at in Act 3 walking into, Act 1 hard mode. They're not really dying a whole bunch. So once I need this survivability, I'll go ahead and take it, but I want to prioritize even more damage. So let's go over there. Building up into the highway this way, I actually don't have an additional jewel to put into the socket. For the jewel socket up here, this is just what I had. So like increase skill effect duration and a little bit of spell damage is not bad. But building up into the grip of evil, building through these nodes here are going to get your minions a huge amount of critical strike chance and then further increase how much crit damage they do. Now, the important part about your minions critting all the time is that, again, how often they're able to ignite and the strength of the ignite that they apply is based off of the damage of the fire damage or the potency of the ignite damage that they would be doing. And if they can crit, and they do, it increases how much fire damage they dealt, meaning that it's more likely to ignite and increase the amount of burn damage that they take. So even though we're like a dot build for all intents and purposes, them critting does further impact this. There's more survivability that we can pick up here through Entropic Incarnation. I don't think that's super important. We do want to pick up a little bit more minion damage here, and then I'm going to build down into Vile Mending. Vile Mending just has so much bang for your buck. I think it's totally worth building into, as well as just being able to pick up a huge amount of additional maximum life. The cool part about all of the maximum life does mean that if you are using the minion instability glyph, that does damage based off their max life. All you have to do is get them down to low life as fast as possible. So being able to explode them for a portion of their max life means that increasing their max life will do more damage. Now, with this being my first ever video on Path of Exile, I want to make sure that I was trying to give you all of the information that I had because I'm brand new to trying to cover this for this game. And it turns out there's just an insane amount of nuance that you have to explain. And there's a lot of different ways of going about stuff. So you may have personally found something that works better for you. There might be absolute pros out there giving you better advice than me. And I'm not going to try to pretend like I know better than them. I'm fairly new to the game. I just played myself through Act 3, really just chatting with my chat. If I came across a particular thing like, hey, Gazzy, it's Act 1, like, why do my minions absolutely suck? I just went over to his stream, asked him, he's just like, nah, they suck, dude. Use Raging Spirit instead. And I was like, oh, good. That's exactly what I was doing. Sick. So I at least intuited some of these things and was able to offset some of the issues that you probably have been running into if you've been trying to do this yourself without following anything. So again, if you appreciated the video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to do my best to just sharpen up all my knowledge on this game, be able to bring you the best information I possibly can. Whenever I don't have the answer for you, I'm going to be referring you to Maxroll. Oddly enough, I work with Maxroll a whole bunch. There's a ton of amazing dudes over on the Path of Exile team. One of the people I've worked with the most would be my boy Palsteron, but there's just amazing, amazing creators over there as well. So if there's something I just can't deliver to you, I'm just going to go tell you to check those guys, because I'm not out here trying to pretend like my ego says I'm the only one who can teach you something. But if you like the video, leave a like on it, leave a comment down below if you have cool new ideas, better strategies, different things. Let me know down in the comments. It's one of the few times where people walking into the channel get a really great opportunity to be able to educate me about the game that I'm covering, and I'm more than happy to hear about it, because again, I have a lot to learn. There's so much in this game, and I'm really excited to be able to dive into the community and hopefully be able to help you all in the best ways that I can. That's enough of me yapping. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly, truly hope it helps you to be able to enjoy your first steps in the early access of Path of Exile 2. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.